Dear friends, welcome again. Friends, in this our today's lecture, we are going to study new topic, that is mechanism of respiration. All of you are known, in our previous lecture, we have completed the detailed study of human respiratory system, and therefore now let us start the study of new topic, that is mechanism of respiration. In this topic we have to study in very detail about the entire mechanism of respiration. Now this mechanism, it include four major events such as breathing, external respiration, internal respiration and cellular respiration. I am going to repeat. The entire mechanism of respiration include four major events such as first breathing, second external respiration, third internal respiration and fourth cellular respiration. Out of these four events, in this our today's lecture, we are going to study only first two events, that is breathing and external respiration, and remaining two we shall study in next lecture. So let us start the study of first event, that is breathing. Breathing, Shwasochwas. Breathing, it is a physical process in which it occurs the exchange of gases between atmosphere and the lungs. Very simple. Breathing, it is a process in which it occurs the exchange of gases between the atmosphere, between the surrounding and the lungs. श्वासोच्छवास या प्रक्रियेमध्ये वातावरणामध्ये असणारे वायू किंवा वातावरणामध्ये असणारी एअर आणि फुफ्फुस यांच्यामध्ये गॅसेस O2 आणि CO2 यांची देवाणघेवाण होत असते. नाउ ड्यू टू द अल्टरनेट एक्सपान्शन and contraction of lungs, it occurs the breathing. I said that the breathing, it occurs due to the alternate expansion and contraction of the thoracic cage. Alternate expansion and contraction of the thoracic cage, wherein the lungs lie. अर्थात आपली जी thoracic cage आहे, छातीचा पिंजरा आहे, त्याचं अल्टरनेट एक्सपान्शन आणि कॉन्ट्रॅक्शन घडून आल्यामुळे ब्रीदिंगची क्रिया ही शक्य होते. You know that due to the expansion of thoracic cage, the fresh air from surrounding, from atmosphere rushes into the lungs. This act is known as inhalation or intake of air, that is inspiration. While due to the contraction of thoracic cage, the foul air present in the lungs is expelled outside. This act is known as the expiration. It means simply breathing is the process in which the fresh air is inhaled, fresh air is taken inside the body, while the foul air is expelled outside the body. And therefore the process of inhalation of fresh air from surrounding into the body is known as inspiration, and exhalation, that is elimination of foul air outside the body, is known as the expiration. So basically we can say that breathing, it includes two major steps, that is inspiration and expiration. So we people have to study initially about the mechanism of inspiration followed by expiration. Inspiration, it is active process. Listen carefully. Inspiration, it is active process, while expiration is passive process. Why this is so? You will understand very soon. The inspiration, that is inhalation of fresh air, is brought about by the expansion of thoracic cage, and here the external intercostal muscles as well as the peripheral muscles of the abdominal diaphragm play very important role. I want to say that the external intercostal muscles and the abdominal muscles, peripheral muscles of abdominal diaphragm, they play very important role in the inspiration. That's why that muscles are called as the inspiratory muscles. Now let me explain you how is the mechanism of inspiration. I am going to draw here a diagram showing the thoracic cage enclosing lungs. Please look at the diagram. Consider, here is the thoracic cage. We know that thoracic cage, it is a bony cage which consists of sternum, breastbone, mid-ventrally. Here I have shown the sternum. Along the lateral side there are presence of 12 pairs of ribs. Okay, that 12 pairs of ribs ventrally are connected to the sternum and dorsally to the thoracic vertebrae. So consider, here are supposed to be the ribs. I am going to show here in all 7 pairs of ribs. You might be known that in human being, out of 12 pairs of ribs, the first 7 pairs of ribs remain directly connected to the sternum, and hence they are called as the true ribs. I am going to show. These are true ribs. The 8th, 9th and 10th ribs are indirectly connected to the sternum via 7th rib, and therefore these are called false ribs. And the 11th and 12th ribs, 11th and 12th pair of ribs are known as the floating ribs, because they have no connection ventrally to the sternum directly or indirectly. So consider, here is the sternum and these are supposed to be the 12 pairs of ribs. And we know that in this thoracic cage, it lie the lungs. Consider, these are supposed to be the lungs. Diagrammatically, I am going to show. With the help of pinkish color, I have shown the lungs. Now, the abdominal diaphragm is nothing but the muscular diaphragm which divides our body cavity into upper thoracic cavity and lower abdominal cavity. Let me show you. Here is supposed to be the abdominal diaphragm. This abdominal diaphragm is convex upward or slightly dome shaped. In addition to that, let me show, here are presence of external intercostal muscles. Intercostal muscles means the muscles which are present in between two ribs. Name itself indicate. दोन रिब्सच्या मध्ये असणारे जे मसल्स असतात त्यांना इंटरकोस्टल मसल्स म्हणतात. ते दोन प्रकारचे आहेत, एक्सटर्नल अँड इंटरनल. इंटरनल intercostal muscles are present along the inner side, and these are the external intercostal muscles. They slant forward and downward. So I initially said these external intercostal muscles and the peripheral muscles of abdominal diaphragm, they play very important role in the process of inspiration, and that's why they are called as the inspiratory muscles. The peripheral muscles of abdominal diaphragm remain attached to the ribs as well as vertebral column. Now, when the peripheral muscles of abdominal diaphragm undergoes contraction, this dome-shaped abdominal diaphragm, listen, when the peripheral muscles of the abdominal diaphragm undergoes contraction, dome-shaped diaphragm becomes flat. Initially, here I have shown it is dome-shaped, but now it becomes flat due to the contraction of its peripheral muscle pushes the abdominal viscera downward. अर्थात त्यामुळे आपला abdominal viscera जो आहे, visceral organs जे आहे ते खालच्या दिशेने ढकलले जातात and hence it increases the volume of thoracic cavity vertically. की ज्यामुळे thoracic cavity ची जी thoracic cavity चं जे व्हॉल्यूम होतं ते वाढतं. Vertical volume of thoracic cage it increases. In the same manner, these external intercostal muscles undergoes contraction. External intercostal muscles पण contraction होतं. It facilitates, it pulls the ribs outward and sternum upward. Is that clear? ज्या वेळेला या एक्सटर्नल इंटरकोस्टल मसलचं कॉन्ट्रॅक्शन होतं त्यावेळेला रिब्स आर पुल्ड आउटवर्ड and sternum is raised upward, which increases the volume of thoracic cage front to back as well as side to side, and hence as there is an increase in the volume of thoracic cage, also it occurs increase in the volume of lungs and pressure of air in the lungs it reduces. We know that the air or gases always moves from high pressure to the low pressure. Now here the air pressure within the lungs is slightly less than the atmospheric air pressure. Therefore the atmospheric air it rushes forcefully into the lungs through the respiratory tract, that is from nostrils to the pharynx to the trachea, bronchi, up to the bronchioles, and then it reaches up to each and every alveoli. This act of inhalation of fresh air is nothing but the inspiration. Now it is followed by expiration. Expiration, it is the act of exhalation, elimination of foul air. I initially told you that expiration it is a passive process. Inspiration is active process. Why? Because for inspiration these muscles of diaphragm and external intercostal muscles have to contract actively. But now for expiration, for elimination of foul air, only these inspiratory muscles only undergo relaxation. It means the peripheral muscles of the abdominal diaphragm relaxes, due to which this flat abdominal diaphragm again becomes dome shaped. बरोबर आहे? या ठिकाणी या abdominal diaphragm चे जे मसल्स कॉन्ट्रॅक्ट झाले होते ते रिलॅक्स होता, पर्यायाने फ्लॅट अवस्थेत असणारा abdominal diaphragm पुन्हा dome shaped होतो. It becomes convex upward and thus the visceral organs take the original position. In the same manner, the external intercostal muscles relaxes, hence the ribs are pushed downward and sternum is also pushed downward, and hence it results in the decrease in the volume of thoracic cage. It results in the contraction. It exerts the pressure on the lungs. या ठिकाणी त्या thoracic cageचं जे व्हॉल्यूम आहे ते कमी होईल. पर्यायाने thoracic cage मध्ये असणाऱ्या ज्या lungs आहेत त्यांच्यावर प्रेशर निर्माण होईल. Of course, this pressure is more than the atmospheric pressure and therefore the foul air present in the lungs is forcefully expelled outside. So this is the passive process. Normally expiration is passive process, but during forceful expiration, during any heavy work, during any exercise, we people perform the forceful expiration, during which it involves the contraction of abdominal muscles. Okay, and that's why I said that expiration is normally physical process, not always physical process. That's all about the mechanism of breathing. Now let us move to the second event, that is external respiration. External respiration. It is the second major event in the entire mechanism of respiration. External respiration, it involves the exchange of gases between the alveolus and blood. Therefore, we can say that external respiration is nothing but the gaseous exchange at the alveolar level. Let us talk about it. We have already studied that each lung encloses bronchial tree, that is primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi, which further divide to form still smaller tubes, that is bronchioles, and bronchioles further divide into still smallest tubes known as the alveolar ducts, and each alveolar duct opens into a large sac-like structure, that is alveolar sac. Let me show in diagram. Consider here is the alveolar duct, which is the smallest branch of bronchial tree, and this alveolar duct, it opens into many small air sacs. These are called as alveoli or air sacs, singular alveolus. Now consider single alveolus here. I am going to draw. We have already studied that the lungs contain numerous alveoli and that alveoli are very small, microscopic and thin walled. Now here each alveolus is closely associated, intimately associated with the pulmonary capillaries. Let me show you. Consider these are supposed to be the pulmonary capillaries. Pulmonary capillaries, these are the thinnest blood vessels formed by the division and redivision of pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery ही जी ब्लड वेसल आहे ती हृदयाकडून, हार्टकडून अशुद्ध रक्त किंवा डीऑक्सिजनेटेड ब्लड हे लंग्स कडे आणत असते. And due to the division and redivision of pulmonary artery, there are formation of capillaries. These capillaries are called as the pulmonary capillaries. And I said pulmonary capillaries are closely associated, intimately associated to that of alveoli, to that of air sacs. These pulmonary capillaries reunite and forms a blood vessel known as pulmonary vein. Pulmonary vein. It carries blood, pure blood, oxygenated blood from lungs to the heart. Now, the wall of alveolus, that is air sac, is very thin and it is made up of only a single layer of thin, flat, squamous epithelial cells. Let me show you diagrammatically. कल्पना करा की या ठिकाणी मी एक छोटासा भाग, here is supposed to be the wall of alveolus. I said the wall of alveolus is very thin and it is made up of single layer of flat, thin, squamous epithelium. Look, these are flat, thin, squamous epithelial cells which form the lining of alveoli. And all these squamous epithelial cells are placed on a basement membrane. So, this is the basement membrane of lining of alveolus. Okay? And this is the squamous epithelial cells. Now, pulmonary capillary is also very thin wall. Pulmonary capillary ची पण wall ही अतिशय thin असते and it is also made up of, let me show. It is also made up of single layer of flat and thin squamous epithelium. Now, the squamous epithelium which form the lining of blood capillary is also placed on its own basement membrane. So, here this white colored line represents the basement membrane of capillary, and this basement membrane represent the basement membrane of alveolar wall. In between these two walls there is a very little gap. Look here, very little space. That space is known as interstitial space. It is very thin, having the thickness of just 0.3 micron, and therefore the exchange of gases between the alveolar air and the capillary blood takes place very easily. So, the wall of capillary, the wall of alveolus and this very thin interstitial space togetherly form respiratory membrane across which exchange of gases takes place. अर्थात या ठिकाणी हे जे मी स्ट्रक्चर दाखवलंय ते रेस्पिरेटरी मेम्ब्रेन आहे आणि त्याच्या अक्रॉस गॅसेसचे एक्सचेंज होत असतं. नाउ द एक्सचेंज ऑफ गॅसेस टेक्स प्लेस ड्यू टू द partial pressure gradient. It means due to the difference in the partial pressure of gases at two regions. Of course, the gases diffuse from high partial pressure to the low partial pressure. Now, the blood flowing through the pulmonary capillary has partial pressure of CO2, that is 45 mmHg. या ठिकाणी कॅपिलरी मधून वाहणारे जे रक्त आहे त्याच्यामध्ये असणाऱ्या कार्बन डायऑक्साइडचं पार्शियल प्रेशर हे 45 mmHg आहे. mmHg it is the unit used for the measurement of air pressure or gas pressure. While the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the alveolar air. अल्व्हिओलस मध्ये जी हवा आहे त्या एअर मध्ये असणाऱ्या कार्बन डायऑक्साइडचं पार्शियल प्रेशर आहे 40 mmHg. 40 mmHg. And so obviously the carbon dioxide, it diffuses from high partial pressure to the low partial pressure. So here it occurs the diffusion of carbon dioxide from capillary blood into the alveolus. Here also I am going to show. कॅपिलरी मधून वाहणाऱ्या रक्तामधला कार्बन डायऑक्साइड हा अल्व्हिओलस मध्ये डिफ्यूज होत असतो. ऑन द अदर हँड, द पार्शियल प्रेशर ऑफ ऑक्सिजन इन द कॅपिलरी ब्लड इज 40 mmHg and the partial pressure of oxygen in the alveolus is 104 mmHg. Very much high, okay, and that's why obviously the oxygen from the alveolar air, it diffuses into the capillary blood. In this manner it occurs the exchange of CO2 from blood to the alveolus and oxygen from alveolus to the blood, and this exchange of gases takes place at the alveolar level is known as internal respiration. Now, as the oxygen gets diffused here into the blood, it is to be carried up to each and every cell. It represents the third step. So that third step, that is internal respiration, and final step, cellular respiration, we shall study in our next lecture. So let us stop here today. Thank you and bye.